the course of the day, we've heard a lot about the importance of focusing on more direct relationships. And allied to that, we're seeing apps become ever more important to publishers again. I think it kind of feels like it's round two of apps. And there really does seem to be a renewed energy around developing innovative, engaging user experience through apps again, which is great. So in this session, we're going to do a deep dive into the world of apps, and we're going to do it from three very different perspectives. You all have very different brands with very different content, very different audiences, and very different business models. And on the stage, we've got Ariscielle Novicio from the New York Post. We've got Kathy Colafemina from the Boston Globe, and we have James Cooney from Condé Nast. As I said, three very different businesses. So I thought a good starting point would be to just from the top, give us a sense of how apps contribute to the business model that is particular to you. So Ariscielle, I'm going to start with you, if you don't mind.
Sure. So historically, and I would even say just if we were talking about today, and what we have in the App Store, it's a very small portion of the New York Post's business, right? But I think as we think about gaining more direct traffic and engagement one-to-one with our consumers, the most engaged users that we have, and we know this from a lot of research and studies, is with our app, right? So like you said earlier, like it feels like it's 2010 again, right? So everybody's talking about direct traffic, everybody's talking about apps, everybody's talking about innovation, user behavior, really cool experiences in the app and on a device that people are tied to. So that's exactly how we're thinking at the New York Post, like really lean into the most engaged users that we have, because they are, right? They come multiple times a day, and I'm actually really impressed at how often they come. They must not have like a lot of hobbies, but read the New York Post. So I'm really leaning into that audience.
And James.
Yeah, so Condé Nast is a multi-brand, multi-market, multi-language, multi-revenue line, multi-channel business. And the digital business is like primarily on the web, if you exclude off-channel. And so similarly, the apps are a small portion of the audience, but they're the most engaged audience, and they're paying audiences on 2 out of our 3 sort of main portfolio apps. And so those are the vectors of the highest direct engagement. The Vogue app across all of our portfolio has the most engagement. And so that's the area where we really lean into that and have a direct relationship that isn't beholden to the big platforms.
Okay, and Kathy, finish us off.
Sure. The Boston Globe, as you know, relaunched our app in mid-24. And this past year, we really worked on building it so it was a retention product at the time. We have also made sure that we have given customers any way they want to take in the information. So they can read it, they can do text-to-speech and listen to it. We've launched video. We have our new Boston Globe Sports Report TV show. So we're trying to make sure that there's a breadth of way that people can engage with us. We have in-app commenting, things like that. And what I'm hoping that we move on to next is much more personalization. So as you know, we're looking at follow for the app, but also just to expand on that.
So I just want to pick up on something, because I think this is potentially different across the 3 businesses. You mentioned retention. So we've thought of, and a lot of our customers have thought about apps from a retention perspective for a long time now. And certainly we see green shoots, if you like, of apps becoming more of an acquisition tool. James, do you want to just kind of pick up on that? Is that how you look at them, or is it still a retention tool for you?
No, it's a retention tool, but also I think a place where engagement, and there is an acquisition element, but acquisition is really hard in terms of the apps, especially if you're not willing to have a big actual sort of go-to-market budget for them. The acquisition continues to be a challenge, and so the web is still the top of funnel for that. But where we have the retention is in terms of the features, like we're just talking about, community, quizzes, puzzles, and games. Those sort of things do tie into it. Our primary metric is MAU over DAU, Retention is kind of hard for a cross-functional product team to use as a KR because of how long it is. But retention is, I think, the main business driver, but measured through other means, and really habituation, sort of weekly users, MAU over DAU, like I just said. Those are the metrics that we're following, but it is in service of retention, really.
And do you put a number to that? Is there a kind of tangible ROI in terms of dollars that you can put?
There is. I don't have that number offhand, but I know the New Yorker has a specific number that goes to the less likely they're going to churn, and then they can tie that to their customer acquisition cost and see a reduction there.
And Ariscielle, how about you? Retention versus, I guess, not audience acquisition, because apps really are pathetic at that, but subscriber acquisition, for example.
I kind of think about all of it all at once, to be honest, right? Because like if you think about the experiences that you deliver, and if you think about one-to-one personalization and what technology can now deliver to consumers, I think about retention and loyalty of my existing users. Then I think about experiences to acquire new demographic, new people through multimodal experiences. Then I think about for retention acquisition across all demographics, let's say. I think about also go to market, and I plead a lot for marketing dollars to make sure that we're not just building technology that nobody know anything about. So I play for both.
And actually, so on the marketing thing, again, this is something we see as a challenge for everybody. It's just getting money to actually surface the existence of this thing. As you think about an audience member, a reader or something, if let's say you've got one reader, where would you rather send them right now? Are you sending them to the website? Are you sending them to an app? How do you decide? Yeah,
kind of depends who they are. If they're an advertising monetized user, the web. If they're a paying subscriber that we want to not churn, an app. And if they're a commerce user, like an affiliate commerce, still the web. We're not seeing a lot of conversion there, although I think there's a lot of hope for personalization and known audience, and then reaching out to them via push notifications. But we haven't seen that yet. So it really depends on what the revenue line you're trying to grow there is.
Actually, so I want to pick up on the revenue line thing as well, because again, if we go back to kind of the traditional view of an app, I think by and large, we see it as a reader revenue tool, right? As a subscriber tool. It normally is thought of as a kind of a premium experience for the people who are willing to pay for it. And advertising's always kind of been there in the background, but not really, not really much value attached to it. I think you have a different approach right now, certainly with the app that you're conceiving. It would be great to hear a bit about that, Ariscielle.
Sure. So definitely still the advertising business is key for us. But I've started to think about premium areas of the product that we're working on now that we're going to solely dedicate to direct sales and premium sponsorships and premium partnerships. Another way we're thinking about is really supercharging the e-commerce experience, because that has been a growing business for us. So that would be like the third way we would make money. And then added value areas, not for the immediate launch of what we're working on, but areas that could be VIP areas. And then a fifth is, because I haven't launched it yet, so I can't really talk much about it, but we're working on a technology that would ensure the parity between web and app CPMs.
Can you even talk at a high level about how that would be possible? Because we find traditionally that's tricky, is to get an equal CPM through an app because of lack of cookies and data and so on.
Yes, a little bit. Maybe next year I could talk more about it, but right now I could talk about it, just the foundation that we've been building on. And Michael, who I'm looking at here, was part of that team, is building out the data infrastructure to make sure that we have as many signals within our app that's delivered to the bid stream. And we're furthering that technology in the next year.
And that's the layer that you're applying to the anonymous audiences they're coming in before they get into the kind of the premium content, is that right?
We're applying that to 100% of the audience that comes to us.
Oh, right, I see, okay.
Yeah.
But then you have this tiered approach of everybody, and then the subscribers, and then the premium subscribers as you kind of drive them up.
Yeah, so we have signals against the anonymous users, and then the registered users, and then the people who, I guess it's the same, that we have that have opted in to give us their email addresses.
And how about with Condé, again, a big advertising business?
Yeah, so we're actually just starting those conversations in the Vogue app specifically. So one of the things that's been interesting is the New Yorker has had ads in it for years, but they have less of the custom logic and code that our advertising teams have requested, our advertising partners have asked for, that exist in sort of the client-side JS on the web. And we're actually starting those conversations now because it would be unrealistic to try to reproduce 5+ years of code in a Flutter or a Swift or a Kotlin code base. But if we go back and actually talk about it from a use case perspective, like, so what are the actual requirements that the clients need to be able to do the sort of addressing of their audience, the targeting, the roadblocks, whatever the features need to be to build those specifically rather than finding exact parity for all the use cases. That conversation's just starting now. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, Kathy, do your commercial teams get involved at all in the app development?
They don't. Right now, we are strictly programmatic, and it's kind of hands-off, but it's definitely been beginning to speak about that. So I think in 2026, there'll be definitely more opportunity to do more with ads within the app. That's the goal.
I mean, we're seeing this. I'm just wondering what's changed. Why has it taken 10 years for these platforms to be seen as a viable advertising platform? Is it just because they're reaching scale? Or is it because we're all a bit desperate? We need the money.
I think it's we were for a long time. I think in earlier discussions we were chasing page views, right?
Yeah.
And now we want to maintain the scale, but you also want to future-proof and build for loyalty and depth.
And I would agree to that point. We feel like we build a good foundation of an app now, and now we can expand and we can grow and we can experiment, which is what I think 2026 will be for us. But I think we're working very hard in 2025 to build a foundationally solid app that people use. We have a great readership. There's about over 40% of our subscribers come in through the app.
Yeah,
So-
and then can I add one more thing just on advertising? Because we think about, like, how can advertising feel more premium? So, I mean, Eduardo and his team on the Wiseline side, we've had ideation sessions around just what could an advert, like, what's a really good advertising experience that's not annoying like the web, you know? So we've had those sessions and we're starting to build those.
Yeah, that was something I was going to say is the premium experiences and the audience that's interested in a premium experience is interesting to advertisers. One thing as well is I feel like there's more comparison with very different sort of app-first companies. So, like, I don't know about everyone else, but we constantly have internal comparisons to TikTok or Instagram. And ignoring even the massive scale of those social networks, they're often app first. They're not on GAM or larger social networks. They're really running their own network. And the underlying sort of technical flow is pretty different. And so I don't think that's going to be resolved immediately. But I do think the idea of, hey, we don't want to be just doing what we're doing on web. We want to have something that feels as good, as sexy as it does on like an Instagram is definitely something the advertisers are interested in. We as product developers really want to bring it to them as well.
Okay, so there's something that just triggered, and I know, Kathy, you were dealing with this over the last year, which is video, in particular vertical video. And we think about Instagram Reels, and we think about TikTok, and we think about that as an ideal user experience for consuming video. You know, you're literally swiping from one video to the next, and it just feels so natural that that's what we should all be doing in these apps. But then actually you hit the reality, which is you can't create hundreds of apps a week in order to create that user experience. Or can you? How do you go about not mimicking, but you know, following the conventions of those user experiences, but actually having the content to back them up?
Well, I think it's a combination. You have the audience that wants trusted journalism. So that's what they're looking for. And then we have the vertical video so that people can consume it the way they're interested in consuming it. We're not going to replace any of these other video, you know, that produce thousands and thousands of videos, but it's another way for a user to consume the content that we have when they're looking for, you know, trusted journalism. So it just gives them yet another option for how they're taking in the data.
But how do you create enough? Because after 4 swipes and there's nothing left, it's going to be a bit jarring. I mean, do you have the
Yeah, it
volume?
is. And this is where some of our data science teams and their recommendation engines using both first-party models and third-party AI models, I think there's a hope that we could get more and more relevant content. Fitting the form factor is going to be a challenge. We also are, one of my video teams is just this week testing AI horizontal to video cut downs. Some of the prior examples have not been successful and I don't think would be acceptable. But there's, I think, a variety of ways of using automation tools to repurpose and repackage content to the surface that the user's engaged in that is widely interested in. I don't think it's cracked yet. This, like you said, this may be a 2026 conversation, but there's a lot of thinking about that right now.
Yes, and I think as far as like the quantity of output that the social platforms have, I don't know that we're trying to mimic that, right? We are trying to compete in the sexiness of the experience, right? Because I think for the most part, and this is how we think about vertical video. Like I love the two-way kind of way you could just like something really quickly, that user experience, you can share it. So we mimic those best of vertical video experiences, right? But as far as content, we still truly want to be ourselves.
And so I think about the Daily Mail. I don't know what they call it in the app, but the sidebar of shame. Which seems to have endless content. If we imagine the New York Post app in January or February when it launches, is there going to be a lot of that kind of cultural celebrity content where you think people will spend a significant amount of time in the app on that content alone?
Yes, but there's going to be a lot of experimentation to start because we really want to deliver content that our audience is engaging with, right? Like I don't want to deliver, that's not TikTok content. My demographic on the New York Post is not the TikTok demographic, right? So there's a lot of experimentation on the content that we're going to deliver, the new formats that we're going to deliver, and then we'll pivot from there.
Oh, I'd like to talk about story formats in a second. I've just got a really kind of practical question for James, actually. You mentioned that the landscape to portrait video clipping, the automated service, is not good enough. I mean, I'm guessing for something like Vogue, that's going to be very hard to get that right. Can you imagine for news media, could it potentially be easier, or do you not think so?
That's a good question. I mean, it's also the sort of thing that, I mean, this feels like the old pan and scan film industry conversation in a way, that if there's a view that let's shoot in a semi-safe for both and you could automate, that's fine. We did, for the Met Gala one year, we did produce a vertical video stream, and it was exactly that way. The production company basically shot safe for both. Right. And then there's other versions where you could run two cameras depending on sort of the production budget of a given event. But I think what you're talking about, it varies. If it's a highly creative, moving sort of runway show, that may be a little bit more challenging, although the human body is very natural fit for portrait. But for news media, especially if it's going to be talking head, interviews, things like that, there's probably a lot of possibility there.
Yeah, and I've seen a few vendors out there. Storyfy Me, have you come across those guys? I think they're doing a lot of kind of automated creation of vertical video from images and copy and so on. Yeah. I don't know how. Is anyone using them or... No. Yes. Oh, Mark's using them. Okay, cool. Okay, so we've talked a bit about content. Can we do the story format thing? I'm really interested. Only because we've kind of for the last few years again in news and magazine apps, there's the fairly well understood convention of how to deliver content, and then we're seeing, for example, in Instagram, the nice kind of card-based storytelling. Are there any cool news story formats that any of the three of you are working on right now that you'd like to tell us about?
We did work on a reel style that mixes sort of text cards, vertical video, vertically cut images or cropped images, and the engagement's fantastic. It's got to be monetizable though, and so figuring out the right places for that are one of the questions. And that's actually another area where sort of what we were talking about earlier with the advertising teams, actually starting with them in the room as we're conceptualizing, I think I actually feel terrible that we weren't doing it already. Like I think that is like an obvious miss, that having that in the room as we conceptualize before we, it was maybe an old model. We build it, we'll build an audience, and then we monetize it. And that's just, at least for us, not the case anymore.
So I think back in, apps V1 when we were all very excited and popular mechanic and lots of things flying around the page and so on. And very quickly within, well, let's say a year or two, we'd got to the point where I think it's fair to say that apps basically get what they're given, right? If you're creating it for print, you're creating it for the web, yeah, the app can have it, and that's pretty much it. I think for a long time, we haven't had dedicated content built for this very specific experience. Is that changing now? It feels like certainly, Ariscielle, in your kind of new version, there's a lot more which is app first rather than web first. Is that fair to say?
I would say it's app also, right? Because I think before it was like the web and then the app would inherit things from the web, right? Now, with our team, we think about the web experience for sure, and we're doing a lot of work there, but we're also very much thinking about what a playground the app can be. Like my team's really excited with the Wiseline team, just thinking about new ways we can lift that product. And there's so much more you can do in the app. So we're thinking a lot about that.
And Kathy?
We try to be mobile first, but one of the things we did when we launched the app is that we have a specific app homepage so that it can pull from the regular website. But if we want to customize it so it's more friendly for the mobile app, we can do that. I think we want to expand that and come up with different ways to distribute the content within the app that's more appealing to our customers. So I'm hoping we can pursue that.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, because that sounds like so simple when we say that from like our seat, but the reality is, and the beauty of like the things that we're working on, the new experiences that we're working on for all our distribution platforms but right now we're talking about the app, right? Is the work that needs to go into the workflow and into the CMS, right? And all those customizations to now say, this is what it looks like when you distribute on the web. But guess what? Video is this, headline is this, photo is this, and the experience is this on the CMS for the app. Yep. So a lot of that also had to be worked out, and we worked pretty closely with the editorial team to make sure that we can tell the story the way they want to on multiple platforms, but not totally disrupt their day-to-day workflow.
Yeah, the editorial engagement really is key. On Vogue, that's been an area where we've built a lot of new features app first, and some of them are for a while now app only. Part of that is sort of a customer acquisition strategy, but it's also because editorial sort of leaned into the set of new features that we've been able to give them. There's sort of an entire contributor network of experts in the industry that have sort of a feed and follow posts. There's group chats, some quizzes, and then a lot of the community engagement, including multimedia community engagement, which is new, and I think a lot easier in the app, where you have that easy affordance of you're either already in the photo roll or you're going to break out the cell phone camera and do it. But none of those, I think, would go anywhere if they didn't have the editorial engagement and buy-in. Some of those ideas originated with editorial, and that's really when they shine, we found, is when there's a push. And if there's not a push, then the same feature will just not get a lot of engagement. Also, those are great customer acquisition moments. The Nicki Minaj group chat, which is only available in the app, was not one of the biggest single-day driver of sort of downloads and new starts that we had. And so all of those really sort of fit together, but it really does rely on editorial.
Can you quickly talk us through that? So this was a very specific event which specifically drove app downloads because it was the only way you could consume the event.
Yeah, so it's the opportunity for the audience to talk and sort of have it refreshing in the app. It's a similar sort of Ask Me Anything, any of the group chat sort of environments. But when Nicki Minaj was in the building to deal with it, they were able to sort of get her agreement to take part in this activity, and so there was sort of a video component where they're doing a quick shoot, and there was a sort of sitting and working on it with the guidance of editorial, and sort of you see this opportunity for people to interact with the culture makers that is part of the appeal of Vogue and the ability to give access to those culture makers. And the only place to do it was in the app, and so it was a huge spike as that got pushed through various social channels.
That's very cool. I don't suppose you're allowed to tell us how huge, like numbers.
No,
I always want a number. I never get them.
we're not publicly traded, so a lot of that stays
That's fair.
confidential.
But on numbers, okay, but just generally, I don't need to get specifics, but it'd be great to understand how you measure success. What are the metrics that you look at to determine whether the app specifically is doing its job? Kathy, would you start us off?
Yeah, I mean, some of it is the basics. We look for visits, the normal analytics. We also have time on site and retention. People are staying at the site. We want to see if a web user who downloaded the app has a higher propensity to stay and be a subscriber. That is a plus. But like I said, we use the app right now as a retention, and it's part of our flow. So when you buy a subscription on the web, we tell you about the app, and then we give you a QR code right on the onboarding, so you can download the app right away. But the fact that more and more people are going to the app is huge for us. So those are some of the key points, and I'm thinking in the future, we definitely want to switch over to also use it as an acquisition tool, and start playing with different options and offers.
Much the same. It is weekly users, repeat weekly users is a big one. The sort of engagement over time, we found returning users over a 3-month period are basically our users now. And so that's a big metric that we keep an eye on is, okay, did they acquire it? Did they use it multiple times in the month? Great. Did they use it in the second month and drop off? Well, we may have lost them. Whereas if we actually have them become a repeat multiple times a month user into the third month, they're not churning at that point, it looks like. So that's a big one. And then similarly, revenue in the subscription portions of the apps, or for the apps that are subscriber benefit only, that would be another one. New starts is a big one for Epicurious, which has a lot of new acquisition through the app stores. Thanksgiving's coming. If you need to find your recipes, get the Epicurious app, 1 week free trial, and then hopefully you'll love it and stay on it. So things like that are a lot of what we're looking at.
What about time spent?
Yeah, time spent time spent's actually been a hero metric that was adopted across everything last year. It was a little bit misleading because I think everyone said, yes, we're going to track this, but I think, UVs, monetizable ad impressions, all of these things maybe got more attention, but it is part of it. One of the things that was also interesting was our data governance group had a real challenge figuring out how they measure time on app versus time on site, because you don't have the pings and some of those other metrics. So you've got to have a slightly different methodology for how it's calculated. But yeah, time on app is definitely one of the things we look at.
Yeah, so because I'm rethinking sort of where our app fits, right? So everything that was already said, but I'm thinking specifically about daily active, sessions per user, repeat visits per day. I'm very much on the daily and how many people are coming every day, and how many screen views per user. And then because I'm really focused on parity, I'm focused on the CPMs. And there was one more thing, but it's referral traffic into the app. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, just a little bit of a switch in tack then. Well, where should we go? I thought I'd quite like to touch on games, because they seem to be, the New York Times have done so well out of it. We certainly see across our publisher portfolio, unbelievably powerful for engagement and time spent. Are any of you, I know James has got something quite cool up his sleeve. Why don't you start? Because you've got quite a cool game and a few cool games.
Yeah, so we are, and again, actually, to test what I was saying earlier, is it's coming out of an editorial perspective. So Vogue has Runway Genius, which is like a quiz around runway fashion history, a lot of interesting A/B testing around like how challenging it is, how much time people have. But one of the things that's most exciting about that is that it's actually a vector for education for people. So it's not just a Sudoku, not that that's not a vector for education for math as well, but it's really sort of in that space for people who love fashion and are interested in it, who are the core Vogue audience, a way for them to sort of continue to learn and then also engage with the community. The New Yorker's always had sort of in print a history of games and sort of a right to play, no pun intended. And we've now are in the process of launching a larger suite of games than just sort of licensed crosswords. We just last week, actually they launched at the New Yorker Festival a game called Shuffalo. It's a wordplay game, a spelling, building words, really beautifully designed, and I think a lot of fun. Can be frustrating as well, as we saw earlier. And we're committed to deliver 2 new games in 2026. But the big takeaway I have from that is the visual nuance of games is just very different from other sort of products we get. Very challenging, rewarding when you get it right, but very challenging. And then the editorial involvement, like everything, is the real sort of key to it being a success.
I'm sorry to keep asking you questions, but I do have to. I think it's specific to you, which is there's a huge investment. There's a material investment in building your own unique game, as opposed to having a perfectly good, set of Sudokus and crosswords and so on, which probably do a pretty good job.
Yeah.
How do you think about the return on investment of that spend, building something?
Yeah,
which is
there's a
unique to the
specific
brand?
business case that was put together, several options modeled out. And it's not exclusively building our own. I mean, it is going to be a mix of partnering, licensing, and building our own. But yeah, I mean, basically that is the exact calculation. I think really part of it is, again, the buy-in. So, everyone from David Remnick on down was sort of committed to this as part of building a sort of high retention, aligned to brand, high value digital product for the New Yorker.
Kathy?
So games is a
Follow
prominent games. I know I can't. Games is a prominent icon at the bottom of our app, so we are driving people to that. Right now it's web view, but we're hoping that we can get that as a in-app piece. But it still drives a ton of engagement. It's very popular. We do have one game, a line that we've homegrown, along with our crosswords and mini crosswords. So I think that's going to be built up in the next year.
Ariscielle?
We do have a game section on our site, but we are rethinking a closer and a tighter crossword puzzle with our editorial team. Yeah. You'll see that in the new app.
So can you tell us when this app is launching? Are you allowed to give us a...
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Well, I think we're out of time. In fact, we were out of time a few minutes ago, but thank you so much, Kathy, James, Ariscielle. It's been really interesting. Cheers.
Thank you.